There is no real competitor for Palantir. That's a direct quote. And it didn't come from, some Silicon Valley venture capitalist, and it wasn't a marketing pitch.
Right.
That statement came directly from a NATO commander.
Which is just a staggering claim to make, on the global stage.
Yeah.
Especially when you consider just the sheer amount of capital flowing into the enterprise software sector right now.
Exactly. I mean, if you've been following the tech space, the biggest companies on the planet, these absolute titans with multi-billion-dollar R&D budgets, they are all actively gunning for this exact market.
Oh, absolutely. They want it bad.
Right. So when a NATO commander steps up to a microphone and publicly states that nobody can even compete, we have a massive disconnect to explore today.
Yeah, we really need to figure out why the tech giants are struggling to close that gap.
Yeah.
So the goal today is to unpack the fundamental difference between, building world-class software and doing what Palantir actually does.
Which is what, exactly?
Well, it's basically rewiring the entire cognitive structure of an institution.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, so we're going to look at the challenges, the technological mechanisms at play, and why extracting an organization from Palantir's ecosystem is so notoriously difficult.
And just to set the baseline for you listening, this is part 3 of our series on Palantir, so we are skipping the absolute basics today.
Yeah, no 101 stuff today.
Right. We've already covered the history, we know the core platforms, and we aren't going to rehash the ICE system. We are focusing purely on the competitive battlefield. So let's look at the heavyweights stepping into the ring. You've got Databricks, Snowflake, and Microsoft Fabric.
Big 3, yeah.
So what are they fundamentally building, and why is that failing to kill Palantir's momentum?
Well, to understand the disconnect, you have to look at the architectural philosophy of these competitors. Take Snowflake, for example.
Okay.
They revolutionized the cloud data warehouse by separating compute from storage, which basically means companies can store massive amounts of data for super cheap and only scale up their processing power when they actually need to query it.
Right, which is huge for budgets.
Exactly. And then Databricks came at it from a different angle. They built this unified analytics platform around data lakes, which is heavily optimized for data scientists running really intensive machine learning workloads.
Mostly on unstructured data, right?
Right, exactly. And then you have Microsoft Fabric, which is essentially this end-to-end platform trying to seamlessly integrate all their stuff, Data Factory, Synapse, Power BI, into just one cohesive environment.
Okay, I have to jump in here. Because on paper, that sounds completely unbeatable.
Sure does.
Wait, really? These are literal trillion-dollar companies. They have practically unlimited server capacity, armies of top-tier engineers.
All the best in the world.
Right. So if a hospital network or, say, a massive supply chain company needs a data analytics platform, why wouldn't they just adopt a Microsoft dashboard? Aren't data tools just data tools? Why wouldn't Microsoft just brute force their way in?
Yeah, see, that's the logical assumption. But the limitation isn't capital, and it's not distribution.
What is it?
It's the state of the data they actually expect to work with and the specific user they're building for.
Okay.
See, Snowflake, Databricks, Microsoft Fabric, they are fundamentally building tools for data engineers and IT professionals.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, their platforms operate on the assumption that an organization already has the technical staff to pipeline, clean, and structure the data before the actual decision maker ever even sees it.
So they're assuming a baseline level of digital hygiene.
Exactly.
They assume the data is coming in relatively clean or that someone is employed to clean it up.
Right. They provide world-class infrastructure for your data team. But Palantir operates in a completely different reality.
How so?
Their target market is built on walking into environments where the data isn't just messy, it is catastrophically chaotic.
Catastrophically chaotic.
I mean it. We're talking about legacy mainframes from the 1990s, PDF shift schedules, live drone video feeds, and deeply siloed departmental databases that have literally never spoken to each other.
Wow.
Palantir doesn't ask the client to clean the data first. They just ingest the chaos.
Let me try to put an analogy to this, because the difference between clean and messy data sounds like a minor IT headache, but it's actually a fundamental divide.
That's the whole business model. Yeah.
Right. So it sounds like competitors like Snowflake and Databricks are essentially high-end librarians. If you hand them a truckload of cleanly bound, titled books, They will give you the most immaculate, blazing fast, Dewey Decimal System ever created.
Exactly. You can find any book in a microsecond.
Right, a very precise system, provided the inputs are standardized.
Yes.
But Palantir isn't a librarian. They're more like an investigative detective walking into a burning building, or like a basement full of shredded receipts, burner phone logs, and blurry Polaroids.
That's a great way to put it.
And instead of cataloging them, the detective is pinning them all to a giant corkboard and stringing red yarn between them to show the manager exactly who the suspect is, like handing them a finished meal.
The red yarn. Yes, the red yarn in your analogy is a perfect way to understand Palantir's core technological mechanism, which is the ontology.
The ontology, right.
Yeah, when Palantir ingests that chaotic data, they don't just dump it into a massive table of rows and columns. They create a semantic layer.
What does that actually look like in practice?
So if one database from an old 1980s supply chain server logs a part as, say, engine temp 98,
Okay.
and then a modern satellite feed shows a thermal heat map of that exact same location, Palantir's ontology maps both of those entirely disparate data points to a single digital real-world object.
So the end user isn't querying a database table anymore. They're interacting with a digital twin of their actual operation.
Precisely.
Like a hospital admin sees a digital representation of a specific ICU bed, the nurse assigned to it, and the oxygen supply, rather than looking at 3 separate spreadsheets.
And that's the key. They bypass the data engineer entirely.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the hospital administrator or the military commander on the ground, they don't need to know SQL. They don't need to write code.
They just need to make a decision.
Exactly. They are non-technical decision makers operating in high-stakes environments. The competitors are building the best possible tools for the tech teams behind the scenes. Palantir is building a bespoke operating system directly for the person pulling the trigger.
Okay, but building a dynamic ontology that automatically maps a 40-year-old mainframe to a modern satellite feed, that doesn't just happen with a generic software update.
No, definitely not.
Like, you can't just download a file and expect it to understand the nuances of a specific hospital's triage protocol. How do they actually map that red yarn for every single distinct customer?
Well, this is where they deploy one of the most unique and, frankly, expensive models in the tech industry. They use forward-deployed engineers.
FDEs.
Right, FDEs.
Yeah.
Most enterprise software companies, they sell you a massive license, give your IT department some admin credentials, do a few webinars, and leave you to figure it out.
Good luck. Right.
Exactly. Palantir physically sends their software engineers to live inside the client's organization.
Wait, literally live there, like embedded.
Embedded. We are talking about engineers sitting at a desk in the Pentagon or in the back office of a massive manufacturing plant for months at a time.
That is wild.
Sometimes years. And they sit side by side with the intelligence analysts or the logistics officers.
But they're software engineers.
Yeah, but they aren't just there to troubleshoot code. They're there to observe human behavior.
Oh, to see how they actually make decisions.
Exactly. If a shift manager is using a physical whiteboard to track bottlenecks because the official software is too clunky, the embedded engineer observes that friction and literally codes that specific whiteboard workflow into Palantir's ontology.
So the software and the institution's organization actually grow and evolve together.
Yes.
They're molding the software around the very specific idiosyncratic ways that one particular military unit functions.
And the result is this incredibly deep symbiotic integration. Over time, the daily operation of the enterprise begins to run entirely through the platform.
Okay, I had to push back on this, though.
Go for it.
Because while this idea of symbiotic integration sounds incredibly elegant, we have to look at the reality of enterprise budgets.
Sure.
If a company is using Palantir and their CFO gets a call from Snowflake offering a massive multi-million-dollar discount, come on, software is just software.
You think so?
Right. A CFO is going to take that meeting. If Snowflake offers a huge discount, you just uninstall Palantir and plug the new one in, right?
Yeah.
You endure a few painful weeks of data migration and you save millions.
See, that logic holds perfectly true for traditional software, like an email client or a CRM. You just swap it.
Right.
But replacing Palantir at this stage of integration is an entirely different beast. You aren't just swapping out a tool, you are attempting an organizational brain transplant.
An organizational brain transplant,
Yeah.
because the data models aren't just storing information, they're defining the workflow itself.
Exactly. If you rip Palantir out, your personnel literally lose the ability to process their morning briefings.
Wow.
The custom dashboards, the semantic relationships, the automated alerts that tell a manager a shipment is delayed, all of that logic is custom-built into Palantir's proprietary ontology.
So to leave them, your staff basically has to relearn how to make decisions from scratch.
Completely from scratch.
Yeah.
Which brings us to a massive pivot point in how we have to view this company.
Yeah, because everything we've discussed so far frames this as a beautiful, bespoke partnership. But does everyone actually buy this narrative?
Definitely not. There are highly respected voices in the financial world who view this exact mechanism as a massive trap.
Like Michael Burry, right?
Yes, the investor famous for predicting the 2008 housing crash. He has explicitly called this dynamic out. He completely disagrees with the deep integration mode.
What does he call it?
He calls it obstruction of data transfer.
Obstruction of data transfer. Okay, let me translate the finance terminology here for the listeners.
Please do.
Burry is basically saying Palantir is like that shady landlord who makes it financially and logistically ruinous to break your lease.
That's pretty much it.
Like, they're not necessarily providing the most innovative apartment anymore, but they are holding all your furniture hostage. The moat isn't built on a love for the product. It's built entirely on the excruciating pain of switching.
Right. When an organization tries to export their data out of Palantir, they don't get the beautiful interconnected ontology.
They just get the raw files.
Exactly. Flat, raw data files.
Yeah.
Massive CSVs, stripped of all those semantic relationships. The red yarn connecting everything is just gone.
Oh, that's brutal.
Yeah, all that operational knowledge the embedded engineers built over the years stays locked inside Palantir's proprietary ecosystem.
Which is terrifying for any enterprise executive who cares about data sovereignty. But Burry's criticism isn't just theoretical, is it?
No, it's very real.
Because there's a concrete example of an organization actually breaking the lease, the NYPD.
Yeah, the NYPD is one of the most fascinating reality checks in the whole Palantir story.
Walk us through that.
Well, they were a flagship municipal client for years. They used Palantir to ingest massive amounts of unstructured data license plate readers, arrest records, gang affiliations.
The red yarn of criminal networks?
Exactly. Palantir provided the ontology for analysts to connect the dots. But the relationship soured.
Why?
The NYPD got incredibly frustrated with the exorbitant costs and the realization that they didn't truly own their own analytical infrastructure. They felt hostage.
Right.
And despite this narrative that replacing Palantir requires an impossible brain transplant, the NYPD actually did it. They completely ripped Palantir out.
But how did they actually do it? Because they didn't just buy an off-the-shelf Microsoft package.
No, they executed a massive in-house extraction. They proved that obstruction of data transfer can be overcome if an institution is motivated enough.
On a standard government budget, too.
Yep. They moved away from Palantir's proprietary graph database model and transitioned back to more standardized open architecture systems.
Like what?
Standard SQL relational databases. They partnered with established contractors like IBM to build a new interface.
I imagine it was a painful transition, though.
Oh, incredibly painful. Analysts lost some of those bespoke, intuitive search capabilities they were used to. It required massive internal retraining.
But they traded the elegance of the Palantir system for actual data sovereignty and financial control. They rebuilt the red yarn themselves?
Exactly. They proved the moat is not entirely impenetrable.
So we have to synthesize what this means for you listening. Does the NYPD case study pop the invincible bubble? Like, does it prove that this unbeatable cognitive moat is just clever Silicon Valley marketing?
Well, it introduces necessary nuance.
Right.
The NYPD proved that at a certain scale, you can break the lock-in. But you have to evaluate the complexity of the environments we're comparing here.
What do you mean?
Managing arrest records across the 5 boroughs of New York City is an incredibly complex data problem.
Sure.
But it is still a localized municipal data problem. Contrast that with the global logistics of the United States Army or the CIA.
Or the NATO alliance.
Exactly. In those environments, you are dealing with real-time satellite imagery, encrypted comms from allied nations using completely different classification standards, live troop movements.
The scale of the chaos is just entirely different.
Completely different. A motivated police department can rebuild a relational database, but building an in-house replacement for NATO's entire classified infrastructure while under active geopolitical threat.
Yeah, that's an astronomically harder proposition.
Which brings us to the ultimate barrier to entry for these tech competitors. When we look at Databricks or Snowflake, the core question isn't actually whether they can write a better ontology engine.
Or if they can afford to send engineers to the Pentagon.
Right. Because the ultimate moat isn't the software itself, it's the trust.
Trust.
Palantir has spent 2 decades painstakingly embedding itself inside the most highly classified, heavily regulated environments on Earth. They have Impact Level 6 clearances.
Which means they handle top-secret data.
Exactly. They have proven over 20 years that they can ingest classified data without catastrophic leaks. You cannot expedite that process with an R&D budget.
So Microsoft has the security infrastructure, but Palantir has the actual combat-tested trust of the global intelligence community.
Spot on.
I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on as we wrap this up. Because if you think about it, imagine a brand new tech startup emerges tomorrow.
Okay.
And let's assume they have a genuine breakthrough. They build an algorithm that is mathematically 10 times faster and more efficient than Palantir's system.
The ultimate software.
Right. Does a NATO commander actually hand over the keys to their classified real-time combat data to an untested startup just because the dashboard loads faster?
Never.
At a certain echelon, the product they are buying is no longer the code. The product is the 2 decades of trust. And trust is the one asset that the trillion-dollar tech giants cannot simply copy and paste.
It really forces us to realize that the battle for this space isn't going to be won in a coding environment. It's going to be won in the trenches of institutional integration.
And that perfectly sets the stage for where we are heading next. Because once a company secures that ultimate trust and they have all of that incredibly sensitive global data flowing through their proprietary system, what happens when you introduce autonomous artificial intelligence into that exact same system?
Oh, man.
In part 4, we are taking everything we've mapped out today and putting it directly on the front lines. We are exploring AI in warfare. This is ELI5 Podcast. See you next time.